This is Duke University.
So hashtag Immersion Day. First person I would like to invite up is Marcia Connor. Marcia is a longtime friend. I remember UVA, New Culture of Learning. I don't know how long ago that was. And long before that, Marcia spent a whole bunch of time in the same area as me, which is really trying to understand how people make sense of things. Charles Handy is one of my favorites, who said, at the end of the day, organizations are nothing but people. The rest is window dressing. And I believe that. So at the end of the day, what you want us to do is strip it down and understand how we make people's lives better within the enterprise context and how we allow people to make sense of things in a more efficient, effective manner so they can move forward. Marcia wrote a book, The New Social Learning. Some of the folks who are featured in this book are here today. She's wise, she's insightful, she's fun, and she's yours.
Better. Hi, everyone. So glad to be with you today. I am going to do what I do immersion style and ignite style. So we're going to cover a lot of information fairly quickly, and I hope you're fasten your seatbelts, and I encourage you to breathe. I find that when people are going through information quickly, they tend to hold on, waiting for the next thing. So the opportunity is to breathe. As Tony explained, I'm Marcia Connor. I'll give you a little bit of context setting for who I am and why I'm here. Hopefully you got some of that. I spend all of my life working with large corporations, in fact some of the largest corporations in the world, helping them become social businesses. And by that we mean organizations that focus on connecting people, building relationships in order to be successful. This is not a new concept. I don't want you to be fooled by anybody today to believe this is new. It's just finally arrived and something that we can talk about and we can lead into it as opposed to shy away from or think it isn't happening. But let me go through the context setting portion of the day. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers. These presentations are going to be available for you. All of the sources of all well-cited journal articles, everything that I'm presenting here is not sort of trivial or minor information. Those sources will be available to you and you can look them up as well. I encourage you to take notes, don't get me wrong, but don't feel the need to actually catch every single number for this to make sense. The idea is hold on tight, get the context for the rest of the day. With me? Great. But we're going to begin at the top of a telephone pole. Everybody up? Matt, you don't have to stand up. Think of yourself climbing to the top of a telephone pole. Can you do that with me? I'm going to watch your faces. I'm going to be able to tell if you are thinking about being at the top of a telephone pole. Everybody up, come on, climb. You can do it. I can see some of you are like, what in the world is she asking us to do? Come on, climb up to the top of the telephone pole with me. Are you there? You're getting close? It's windy and it's cold at the top of the telephone pole. Now imagine that telephone pole is in northern Ontario. Really windy, really cold, and this is your job. Every day, in fact, you go to the top of the telephone pole. Today, however, you're at the top of the telephone pole because you are a technician with a large telecom company, one of the largest in the world, in fact. And the top of that telephone pole, you've gone there because your client is not very happy because their service is not available, and they've called 4 times. You're at the top of the telephone pole, you're looking around, and you know that something is not right. Well, of course you know it's not right. Their service didn't work. But you're at the top of that telephone pole, and you look around, and you know this isn't the way it's supposed to be. You look at that box, and you think to yourself, something isn't right here. But you're at the top of a telephone pole. What are you going to do at that point in time? And now some of you are thinking to yourself, how in this world is this a social business story? You're alone at the top of a telephone pole. If you work for Canadian Telecom TELUS and you were at the top of the telephone pole, and we spoke to the technician who had this exact experience, and you're at the top of the telephone pole, you will reach into your tool belt or walk down and get it from your truck, your handy flip cam, and from the top of that telephone pole, you are going to videotape 360 your environment, the box, the wind, the environment around you, and with just a few thumb clicks, you're going to add some tags, you're going to add your question, you're going to explain what the problem is, and you are going to upload that to your 36,000 person network around the globe, who are now going to have their eyes on your problem at the top of a telephone pole. We too often think of social business as something that happens behind a desk, wearing a suit. It happens everywhere. It's happening all the time. And in this particular situation, the fellow at the top of that telephone pole with you right now, within 40 seconds, received 4 responses back as to what to do. The first one said, "I have no idea how to help you." That happens a lot, actually. I really can't help you. However, you remember how a few weeks ago we were in this exact same situation? I know that you can do it. I trust you. Listen to your gut. You can do it. Take a deep breath. And sometimes that really is what's required when you're kind of freaking out at the top of a telephone pole. The second one said, "I'm not very far away. In a few minutes, I can actually drive and be there with you in person." The third one said, "What you don't know is since you left the office, this is what has changed. And this is what you can do, and this is how you can fix it," and it resolved his problem. The fourth one also said, "I have no idea how to help you, but please upload the answer to the system because I'm on the top of a telephone pole too." Together, we are better. Don't think for a minute this is all about being behind desks. Don't think for a minute this is all about technology. It's about people making connections in ways they have never been able to do before. It's about bringing a level of humanity back to business, and that's why we're here today. I'm going to cover for you some definitions. We're going to look at some related data, and I'm going to give you at least 4 examples of organizations doing this today, the first one being TELUS, which we've already covered. Here are some of those numbers I mentioned to you. 36% of people under 30 in the US are on social network, 50% of world population under 30 have social networking accounts for 22% of online activity. All of these numbers are staggering. I'm not going to read them all to you. The point is that we now live in a connected world. Now, we've been in a connected world for a long time physically. We just haven't all had the technology access to be able to connect across those miles in the ways we're able to access today. Sadly, most of the conversation around social media, around social at all, is around social marketing. Selling you, pushing something to you, putting it in your face. The far bigger story is connecting people with people to change their lives, to change their situation, to be able to create opportunities that have never been able to be created before. And I believe that all of us will be speaking to that point. But please, push back on anyone who says it's all about marketing. Yeah, that's the annoying part, but it's not the big story here. Oh, a number I pointed out to Tony when we were talking about this earlier is one that I find gets a little bit more wow value than some of these. And that is, I work with several very large insurance companies, and they have pointed out to me that there are more people on Facebook today, not just who have accounts, but that who are active users who check in more than 4 times a week than there are insured people in the US. The future is mobile, connected, open, and constant. Study was done very recently that said that many people would much prefer losing their wallet than losing their cell phone. Think about it for yourself. With a phone, you can find somebody who has money in the area. You can find somebody who can give you a ride where you need to be. Without your phone, you just have money. That's not really what we need right now. We need people. We need to connect. We need to find what is next. This, I find, is the largest driver for helping businesses think about why we need to be connected. It just is that way in the world outside of work, so we better get on with it. Oh, you can't see the purple. That's interesting. Can you see it from back there? The purple also? This says business speed. Add that. Mobile. And add that connections of people. And we start to see an evolution of how the dramatic change in our organizations, now paired with the tools in all of our pockets and purses, lead to a way of working that allows us to be connected with the people that matter at work. It always cracks me up when people in organizations tell me that, oh, not at my company. Nobody's doing this stuff in my company. They're too scared. Or better yet, we don't let them. You heard that before? And then I ask them about what's going on in the pockets and purses of their employees. And if you can't do it at work, if in fact you have to turn in your phone, and I surely have been in organizations that is the case, they could do that out in the parking lot. Social media is technology used to engage 3 or more people. I'll explain why 3 in a moment. Social business is connecting people with people, information and insights within an organization. Social learning is participating with others to make sense of new ideas. And what is new here? It's just how powerful they work together. Not any one of these things individually is all that new. 3 people, I started my life out at the National Institute of Mental Health doing brain research. And what we know is that when there is a third person who is a part of the conversation changes. If I'm just sending you email and you're sending it back to me, there may not be any spark. There may not be any change in what's happening. But you add that third person, all of a sudden you get reflective. You start realizing that there's more to it. And that when we actually see a change in behavior and a change in the conversation, which is why I use 3 here. So we start with social media numbers, and then let's talk at corporate business numbers. 300 billion lost in productivity by people not being engaged at work. They're engaged, just not with what you want or need them to be engaged with. A couple other numbers. 9 in 10 adults trust recommendations from personal friends and virtual strangers over any other source. Yes? See some nodding heads? Yet how much money in every organization is spent on marketing and sales and not on investing in the people who are actually spreading the word and saying good things and caring about the work you do? We need to be thinking a little bit differently about how people are working today in order to deal with some of these sorts of numbers. A couple of days ago, my husband and I are sitting on the couch. I'm typing. He's watching football. And I look up at the screen, he's watching the football, and I think, I just can't wrap my head around, this is my personal bias, I just can't wrap my head around the idea that football would be your job. That every day, not the top of a telephone pole, but that your job is to go out in a field, and I don't begrudge or anything the people who are doing that. It's fascinating to me. I just don't get it personally, I'll admit that. And he said, no, that's actually really not their job, to play football. Well, kind of interesting. He said, no. Their job is to get as big and as strong and as fast as possible. That's really their job. And as I'm writing an article, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's the same for every corporation I work with. To get as big and as strong and as fast as possible. But while these folks are thinking very carefully about what they're eating, what they're lifting, what they're doing, I find almost no corporation is thinking about what they're doing muscle-wise to brush up on, to get stronger. As I expressed, I work with some of the largest corporations in the world. Some of them I will allude to in the presentation, but many of them I will not. I've signed non-disclosures because they are flexing their muscles. They're looking at their nutrition. They're thinking about how they're getting stronger today before they let the public know that. And I encourage them to think about it that way. For us all to be thinking about practicing now in order to prepare, to get better at getting better, to ready ourselves for getting big and strong. Does that make sense? It made football actually a lot easier for me to understand at that point. And don't get me wrong, I was actually an announcer for my football team in high school. Crazy long story. It's not that I don't get it, I just don't get it. Why? Why do people want to get bigger and stronger and do different things in business? What are organizations trying to accomplish from Enterprise 2.0, also known as social business these days? Tools? Increase collaboration, raise awareness of what we know, increase agility, faster communication, increase innovation, time to market, a reduction of IT costs and accelerating brokerage of people, finding people to put on the right teams at the right moment. Here it is by age. Too often we hear this is all about the young people. Yes? If it weren't for those young people at work, well, you wouldn't have company. But people of all ages, of all demographics are thinking about how to connect. And here are the reasons that the different groups, and I find this to be more interesting even, segment out as to why they think collaboration is important. Ready? But this was more startling to me. I expect to use the same type of networking tools with my business colleagues as I do with my friends and family. Do you know anybody who doesn't? Anybody? Anybody? In the past, it was the domain of large corporations to be able to have the computing power to handle all the information inside of work. Now my hunch is that you had that same sort of, if not more, computing power in your rec room. It can happen in your pocket. It can happen in your purse. It is no wonder that people expect the tools we have at work, the capabilities we have to connect to people who have the answers we need to make the decisions we need in the moment of need, to be available wherever we are. Because you can be standing in the post office answering your email, or texting from your car on the side of the road for help. It no longer makes sense to be thinking about the technology we've had and the corporations we've had of being old and kludgy and not helpful. But that's what you do in business. It just doesn't make sense anymore. And many of the companies today, most companies today, haven't quite figured that out, but they're getting there. Open windows, open doors, open as much as you can. One of the organizations I've done some work with is the travel company, Sabre. They create the technology, for example, that when you make a reservation, they have online. And they sent out a message to all, and somebody in the organization was thinking to themselves, I really need an Italian translator. Sounds like an interesting problem to have at work, right? And they had about a $10,000 budget for that translator. What did he do? Sent out a simple micro-sharing message. Micro-sharing would be the equivalent in the corporate world as Twitter, for example. They may have used Socialcast or Yammer or another lightweight little tool, very few characters. Anybody know of a good Italian translator? Simple question. Got an answer back, a few seconds. I grew up in a home, the reply was. I grew up in a home that spoke Italian. I've been wanting to brush up. Would it be okay if I get permission from my manager for me to do the translation for you? It's probably an interaction we've heard many times, just haven't had the means to be able to do it in the past. Yes, in fact, he got permission from his manager. Yes, in fact, he became the Italian translator for things in their intranet. And what did they just do? Save the company $10,000. Simple. That's not a big story. It's not a complicated story. Simple and cheap story. What do they do? Created, and I do this with many organizations, a simple column on the right side of their screens where every time somebody saves money, $10 or $10,000 or more, they write it down. One organization does that with the hashtag, saved money, and it rolls up. The end of every month, they were averaging almost $100,000 in savings. Simple, little, happening all the time. One in 3 business leaders frequently make decisions based on information they don't trust and don't have. You'll be hearing later today from Ben Brooks at Marsh, who can tell the story way better than I can, but who will allude and tell you the story about how they believe within Marsh that they have all the answers within their walls. The question is, how do you tap them? How do you find them? I suspect the answers are within almost every organization that we work with, especially the larger organizations. But how do you tap them? How do you find them? How do you connect them? And how do we obliterate stats like this about people not feeling comfortable with what they know or having access to what they need? 2% increase in customer retention has the same effect on profits as cutting costs by 10%. Another startling number. So what are you doing within your organization to cut those costs, to be able to make those connections? In a connected world, moments of isolation will seem out of focus. In the back of a courtroom somewhere in Los Angeles, there is someone today, maybe not quite yet, but maybe in about an hour and a half, from the public relations firm Davies. You heard of them? They specialize in high media stories, specifically ones that are potentially dangerous to their clients. It means that they've had some scandal happen in the organization. They bring in Davies and they help with dealing with the situation. And someone's sitting in the back of that room, sitting in the back of that courtroom at Davies, and they are typing, tweeting, or the equivalent of microsharing to the rest of their employees all over the world of what's happening. To some extent, a play-by-play where that is allowed in the room or where it is outside of the courtroom in most cases. And they are sharing with their organization what's happening. They're keeping them in touch with the rhythm of the day as to how things work, of what's happening. They're connecting them with the information they need to make better decisions, to be better informed in order to make better decisions on what they're doing tomorrow. As a result of that, they have identified that their time for people to become productive in their organization has dramatically decreased. We've seen anywhere from 6 months decrease in time to feeling comfortable with the workforce to well over that. We see consistently that when you join a company, you really don't get it. You don't know the pace of how things work. You don't really have a sense as to what's going on and where and who to contact. You see a social network or you see a microsharing bits and pieces, and you get pretty quick about who's doing what and how things flow and how things work, and all of a sudden you feel far more connected in a way that is not so much one you can cognate, think about, but you can just sense and feel. I encourage organizations to move away from answering this question, what are you doing? The most common question we see at the top of a microsharing box, like on Twitter. I find almost everybody I work with in corporations doesn't have a clue how to answer this question. Or better yet, they think that if they answer it, no one will care. Nobody cares what I'm doing, and more importantly, I don't care what you're doing. So they don't answer it. They take it a little too literally. So not only do I encourage organizations to change the question, most of these systems you actually can change the question if you didn't know that. Or put a little post-it note on the side of your computer that has alternative questions that you can answer instead. And after you've been participating in one of these networks for a while, you'll discover that most people are answering a different question anyway. They're answering what has your attention. What do you need to know now? Are you available? Can you help me with this problem? Is there something you are doing that everyone else should know about? What are you learning that I should be learning as well? Many eyes make light work, less costly work too. Financial standouts are 57% more likely than underperformers to use collaborative and social tools to enable global teams to work. %2 increase. Oh, we had the number we saw before, actually. Companies with highly engaged employees have 26% higher revenue per employee. Does this make sense? Seem shocking? Seem crazy? Seem new? Too often we have asked employees and organizations to stay stuffed inside their desk drawers. I feel that way sometimes. I can't do this. With social connected tools, with an environment that we reach out to people, we come out of those drawers and we can be our full selves at work. With social technology, you sail further than before, cross the ocean as easily as the hallway. One of my favorite stories is from IBM, where one night a fellow logged into his system and did a global Google search of everything he possibly could find on Kevlar boats. As many of us do, he started at about 11:30 at night. He was meeting with a Kevlar boat manufacturer the next morning. He searched, he found everything he possibly could, and his eyes were getting tired, and he realized this wasn't working so well. So he sent out a simple message. Does anybody know anything about Kevlar boats that I should know for a meeting I'm having tomorrow? Complicated? Again, not so much. Next morning, wakes up bright and early, gets ready for his meeting, and there's a message from someone in Germany who, in fact, not only knew a lot about Kevlar boats, but had worked with this particular company he was calling on, could give him the important points that he needed to cover in his meeting, to connect with the people who cared, to make better decisions, went into the meeting, had a great meeting, and eventually closed a big sale. Closed a big sale. I'm thinking sale. And what happened? He found what he needed in the moment of need. Am I saying for a minute that he probably didn't get a whole bunch of other stuff? No. But if we view these systems sort of like how we used to read the newspaper and we scanned over the headlines and we over time gleaned the important points and we could filter for ourselves what was vital, and that takes practice, that takes building up those muscles, that takes preparing to get better at getting better. He was able to find what he needed in the moment of need. Together, they were better. Social media is not a fad. It's a fundamental shift in how we communicate personally and professionally. The key issues become organizational capital, the management practices and cultural adjustments needed to enable organizations to deploy and take advantage of these new capabilities, helping people out of their desk drawers, connecting with people, finding relevance, making meaning, and being able to apply what the organization knows to the moment of need. They primarily do 4 things. Targeted queries, who can help you make an informed decision? Real-time context, what are people saying and doing? Emergent structures, who do people rely on? You can see that clearly by making transparent those networks. How do people engage beyond their team boundaries And when do key priorities surface? They make explicit in organizations what has long been tacit, that you're required to know who to talk with to be able to figure it out. You post something by the elevator, or a whole bunch of crazy things that we've done in the past, and all of a sudden it's there, or in your pocket, or wherever you are when you need. Large. In fact, the organization, Vestas, that has the largest amount of wind data in the world has begun thinking about how to apply that data on wind to people wherever they are. So I'll just give you a query, and I'll make sure that this URL is available as well. If you're going on vacation and you want to find out if it's too windy in the part of Mexico you're going to during your vacation, you can find out. They've made all of this publicly available now. But if you're thinking about putting one of these wind generators, basically, throughout the world, in the past, the amount of data you have to cull through to be able to find that is just insurmountable. But now the technology is available to be able to find the information and put it in the hands of people who need it. And so what they've done is they've started making that available to their customers. They've started with social connections, been able to bridge not only the information they have available inside their organizations, but with the people who need that information so that they can power their own work and be able to put these wind turbines where they need them in the moment of need. People are at the heart of the value chain. They always have been, they always will be. If you haven't taken a picture like this of your organization, it'll get wildly popular. I would encourage you to do so. I will so often meet people and they'll say, "Oh, are you?" And they'll just see my face and they'll think, "Oh, I know who that person is." But it's the people behind those icons. It's the people in the organizations that support that value chain. And we need to surface again who they are, what they contribute to make a difference. For the first time ever, in the way that organizations have worked, social businesses help people soar. Ultimately, they should be helping the bottom line of that organization through the people power within that organization. When is the last time that you personally worked towards an objective for the objective's sake? I find it unlikely that you ever have. You've done it because of the people that it impacts, the people that you're working with or for, but not because the objective is written on a piece of paper. We are fundamentally wired to connect, to build relationships, and to use that information in powerful ways. And the sooner we can help organizations stop that from not working the way it should in a people-centric, person-to-person sort of way, the more all of us will be able to soar. I hope this has given you the sort of context needed to be thinking about these issues today, to be challenging not only the school that you are in, but the organizations that you are working with, the people that you are influencing day in and day out, to be thinking about those human connections, again, at work, brought to the surface in a way that allows all of us to get better at getting better, because together we are better. My contact information, whoa, that was fast. My contact information is at the end of, is here as well. I encourage you to reach out. I thank you for your time. I will be here all day, and Tony and I will say thank you. We'll be wrapping up at the end of the day as well, to be bringing some of this back from closure. And I encourage you to reach out, because I too am working not towards objectives, but working towards helping people connect with people. Thank you very much.
Okay, the Twitter stream's live and kicking. What I want to turn that to is if you have questions, we're going to do a little Q&A session, a short Q&A session after Andrea goes next. So if you have questions that emerge, Ben, you've been putting some in there. Jane has been putting them virtually. So we're starting to do that.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.